Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Appreciate your time. By way of introduction, my name is James Leakey. I am a director in the assurance practice here with Forvis Mazars, and I'm based in our Charlotte, North Carolina office. And our esteemed guest this afternoon is Jennifer Tyndall. And Jennifer, I'll have you briefly introduce yourself.
Thanks, James. I'm Jennifer Tyndall. I'm the CFO for MSS. We are a commercial, mechanical, and service contractor. We're also based in Charlotte. I'm based out of our Charlotte office where our headquarters is. We have 8 offices around the Carolinas. I've been with MSS for going on 14 years and served as the CFO for the past 8 years.
Wonderful.
Well,
thank you. And
thank you
Mr.
again
Trammell.
for joining us, Jennifer. And James, thank you. I will, by way of introduction, I will say that I consider myself one of the most fortunate people in the world. I'm not trying to be, the baseball player and say all of that, but I do get to lead. I'm Mike Trammell, by the way. I do get to lead the consulting practice for Forvis Mazars in the construction and real estate space. So if a client or a prospect or an industry friend calls and has a question that's not core tax or it's not audit or review oriented, I get to the job of trying to understand the situation and connect that situation to the right solution by way of the right subject matter expert. So I've been with Forvis Mazars. I merged in now 18 years ago, but have been in construction, accounting, and finance and tax, let's say, for almost 40 years. And there was a time long ago in a galaxy far away when I was a controller and had to make that move from controller to CFO for a construction company. So Jennifer's the star of the day. I'm going to be interested to hear how her path, some 30, 35 years after the fact, aligns with what I did, but hers will be far more professional and far more entertaining.
Wonderful. So what I heard there, Mike, is you have forgotten more about construction than I'll ever know, is what I just heard. So
that's just because I have a very bad memory, James.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. So again, appreciate everyone dialing in this afternoon, and really looking forward to just talk about what it means to be a best-in-class CFO. And our conversation here today is designed specifically for contractors. That being said, if you're finding yourself in the wrong webinar, stay with us. I bet you'll learn something as well. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and kick off our first polling question. Give that a minute here to come up on your screen. You should see that up there, and really just trying to get a pulse of who's in the audience today. So tell us, what type of organization you're with, whether it's a general contractor, a sub, or specialty trade. Maybe you're a service provider to the industry like Mike and I, and maybe it's none of the above, and you're just looking for some CPE. And we are happy to have you on the call as well. So while that is, we'll give you a full minute on that. I don't often get accused of overachieving. However, for today's webinar, there will be 5 polling questions. However, you're only required to answer 3 to get that hour of CPE. So pretty low bar today, but trying to keep you all engaged and get you thinking a little bit for your own organizations, and always just trying to get better and serve our industry. All right.
I was about to ask how we were going to lay odds on how this was going to come out, James, but now it's on the screen.
Yeah. All right. So a third of us here are just trying to get some CPE, and I appreciate the honesty. That's okay. That's okay. Yeah. Well, wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for that. All right. So let's go ahead and cover what we're highlight the agenda here. So having spent some time with Jennifer over the past few years, been in public accounting for 15 plus, had just an incredible opportunity through my career to spend time with CFOs and decision makers and owners alike. And in talking to Jennifer, really just wanted to highlight 5 areas when I think about what it means to be a forward-looking CFO. And those areas around growth, what we'll kick off here next, technology, industry trends, Managing capital, that's an interesting one given the economic environment more so recently. And then we'll wrap up with outside activities, maybe something that gets overlooked or taken for granted far too often, at least in the construction space. So really looking forward to jumping in on these, and we'll go ahead and kick it off with the first one, Jennifer. We'll move to growth.
All right. Well, good. Well, I guess to start off, I'll give you some background on how I got into this role. I kind of took a unconventional route to the CFO office. I think a lot of people find themselves in public accounting first and kind of work through, find a specialty, an area of specialty like construction. I kind of went backwards. My undergrad at NC State was a business management, but I was working in construction through college. I had a position with a material supplier, Division 8 and 10, doors, hardware, Division 10 specialty items. And so I kind of did part accounting, and I also did a little bit of estimating. So I officially, or at least, a lifetime ago, I could read blueprints and do takeoffs. So now they're not on paper anymore. So I probably forgot everything I knew about that. But I really enjoyed the construction environment. And so after I graduated, I continued working in construction and was working for, I've worked for subcontractors and general contractors. And I was working with a general contractor and realized this is really what I want to do. So I decided I'm going to go get my CPA license. And that actually meant I needed more education because, again, my undergrad was business management. I had 2 accounting classes. And every time they said anything about the CPA exam, I was kind of like, la, 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 la. I don't, that's not something that I'm interested in. So, I've learned that you don't really know yourself at 19 or 20 at all. So I went through and got my master's in accounting at UNC Charlotte and continued working through that time and really enjoyed that program. And I knew that's, where I was supposed to be. I actually didn't go straight in and get my CPA license at that time. That was not part of a master's program. You had to then start studying after the master's degree. And I was a little tired of studying. In that master's program, I had my daughter. I was married at the time and had my daughter. And so I was a little burnout on studying. So I just worked on building my career and had some really good opportunities. Moving from an accounting manager, became the controller here at MSS, and had some good people speaking into my career. Our CFO at the time was a great mentor to me and really encouraged me to go and get my license. So as 40 approached, I said, okay, I need to do this if this is something, it's always been a goal, so I'm going to do it. And I hit the books and took, had a lot of support from my family. My sweet husband took our 3 kids and would leave for the weekend so that I could just study. So I took 6 months and just bared down and got that done and did finish before I turned 40. So that was really just personally a goal of mine. And then it worked out to where the timing was perfect because our CFO decided to relocate out of the Charlotte area, and that opened up this position for me. And I don't think that would have been an opportunity for me if I had not gotten the CPA license. So all of that long-winded to tell you, I took a different route, but I learned a lot along the way. So it was interesting ride, I guess. So,
so let me interject here and ask you a question. This entire series, I think James wrote a fantastic article on forward-looking CFO as compared to a controller, and I think that started with the conversation that James and I had because a long ago mentor of mine, I recall where we were sitting and talking, and he said, "Hey, Trammell, what's the difference in a controller and a CFO?" And I'm sure I started to give him some overly technical answer, and he cut me off, as he often did, because he felt like I needed to hear everything he had to say, and he was absolutely right. He said, "Controllers have taillights. I want my CFO to have headlights." So when we were putting this together, we wanted to ask you, how did you shift from that yesterday's accounts and today's account balance to tomorrow and next week and 5 years from now, forward-looking CFO?
That's you're right. That's the big challenge, and I'd say I had to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I knew how to do all of the work. I kind of prided myself on the fact that I could get in there, I could set up jobs, I could bill, I could do journal entries, I could do all of that because I had done it all through my career. So to step away and not be in the weeds and be comfortable with that was difficult. There were a lot of times where I felt like, it was just uncharted territory. I was really good. Honestly, I was good at what I was doing before, and I wasn't so sure how good I was at looking forward. So I think one of the biggest pieces that changed for me, besides just getting out of the day-to-day and getting out of the weeds of it, is to be able to start looking at your financial product and know what that means for the company. And I can remember looking at it in the first few months and thinking, how am I supposed to know that this is telling me a story about what's ahead? But as you really kind of take some more time with that, I started seeing patterns, and I could really count on that knowledge that I had. I just had to develop a bigger picture way of thinking. I think one of the big things for me is my job is not really to produce financial reports. It's to work with our operations teams, our sales teams, our HR, our safety, IT, everybody involved, and they need information from us. But I'm kind of that link between those groups, and I get a lot of energy from that collaboration with those groups. So it's very rewarding if you can get past that point of being in the weeds of it, to really being able to see how that affects the business and decisions that we make going forward.
Perfect.
Great insight, Jennifer. I think that's human nature for us to kind of want to stay where we are in a lot of ways, right? The known, the comfort of being good at something, even if it's maybe at a level that's not your highest and best. And I think that you're a prime example of that. You hit on technology, which is kind of our next topic. But before that, another polling question for those of you out there for us. So looking ahead, what is one area where you would like to improve on professionally? Is it developing your team, other people? Is it something about obtaining a specific certification? Jennifer mentioned, I think it's just such a testament to your work ethic. You didn't need the CPA, right? I mean, those of us in public accounting, it's an expectation, right? But in industry, it just kind of shows who you are, that was something that was important to you and invest in your career. So I love that part of the story. Or maybe for those of you out there, it's you want to get involved in a professional organization. And I've had the opportunity to see Jennifer just thrive in that role, and we'll get to that here in our final topic. And then executive presence or presentation skills, right? For some of us, that's really important, and that's maybe something that you didn't have to do a lot of in the past in your role, and it's something you want to get more exposure to. And then for the rest of you, you just want to get your CPE. So let me just check these results here. So about half of us developing your team, other people. That's awesome. A few trying to get a certification, just under 10% getting involved in a professional organization. Wow. About 30% on executive presence, presentation skills. That's great. Okay. So a little less interest in CP this round. So wonderful.
That was good because I almost commented, I hope nobody answered that. So now I feel a little bit better about myself. I thought I was being way too judgmental for a minute there.
Excellent. Jennifer, you mentioned one of the many hats that you had to pick up, basically going from the controller role to CFO, is technology. And contractors kind of get a bad rap, so to speak, in the market about being laggards of adopting technology. And at least where I sit, that seems to have changed, at least in the recent history, where there's a lot more investment in IT and ERP systems and solutions for field personnel, and making sure these all talk to one another. So maybe can you speak to that a little bit and what that learning curve was like from maybe, hey, I know the ERP, inside and out, and I know all the GL accounts, and I know what, where the bodies are buried, so to speak, to what is this system? And what do you mean we have 30 pieces of software or subscriptions, or, I can't believe we don't have a solution over here and people are doing it on a spreadsheet or, just their own, desktop files. So yeah. I'll pause there, but maybe just share a little bit of what that transition was like for you.
Yeah, so I think one of the first things that we did is we moved to, and this is actually before I became CFO, but I was very involved in this process of our service team was paper and pencil when I started at MSS, and we went to a mobile platform. And it wasn't necessarily the best. This is kind of 2011, 2012 kind of time frame, but it was a step in that direction. And so, and then I was a fast adopter, I think, of payment processing, using a payment processor rather than cutting live checks. And we have been using that system for years. And I found that it cut down on just the administrative in the back office, but also fraud. So I would encourage any of our CFOs that if you haven't taken that step with all the fraud that we have right now, I think it's a no-brainer. But and then, most recently, we have replaced our ERP system. And so that's really been the biggest technology change for our company. We were on the old system since 1999. So you talk about knowing where the dead bodies are. We had a lot of those. And so it's been, that was a bigger project than I could even imagine. And we're still going through it. We went live on June 1st, and it hasn't been without some challenges. But the best part about that is seeing our teams come together. We really had someone from every area working on that. And I said multiple times in different meetings that we're not replacing the accounting system. We're replacing the ERP that's for the whole company. And this encompasses our mobile device for our technicians, our CRM, multiple APIs, our credit card program. I mean, everything that you can imagine is kind of wrapped up in this ERP solution. So that's been, it's been a great step for us. It has not been an easy step. So that's, sometimes people say like if it's worth doing, it's not going to be easy. And this is, I believe we're in one of those kinds of situations where it's just a lot, and you've changed processes and the system for everything that we do. But I'm a firm believer that you have to start down that path and start taking the step. I can remember my dad would always say, do something even if it's wrong. So, start down that path, because you're not going to get any further ahead if you don't take a little bit of risk. And so that's probably another thing as CFO that I've had to be more comfortable with risk, which is, we can talk about that some more when we're talking about cash management, that sort of thing. But I'm naturally risk averse. But in stepping out and doing some of the taking on these technology solutions that we have, you've got to be ready to take a little bit of risk and then dig your heels in and work through it, because it takes some grunt work sometimes.
Let me ask you this, Jennifer, as I think about when I was in that role and changing systems, and then I've been fortunate or unfortunate enough, depending on how you look at it, to help contractors change systems many times over these years. And the thing that I learned, I'm going to ask you the same question, and I expect your answer to be very different. That being risk averse, you had to put that aside, because sometimes you roll up your sleeves and get your hands in there and start doing things, and you have to realize you can usually fix anything, right? Mm-hmm. That was my great takeaway, is don't be afraid to do it, because it can be fixed. As you look back on the technology evolution in your career and at MSS, what's the one takeaway that you went, aha, if I had known that when I started, this would have been easier?
Oh, that's a good question. I think we did a better job with our ERP conversion on this than we did maybe on previous technology platforms, like the initial mobile platform that we chose. But I think getting the buy-in, you just can't do this as an accounting department. It just won't work. Or at least, maybe some companies it will. For our company and our culture, it just won't work. So I think having the buy-in, and aside from that, I might err on the side of being too optimistic sometimes. So I think that's what made it. I may have had a little bit of unrealistic expectations of we're going to be rocking and rolling before most people are. So but that's, if I had to choose, I'd rather be too optimistic than pessimistic. So
wonderful. Jennifer, just a quick question from the audience was curious what ERP you moved to, if you're comfortable sharing.
Oh, sure. We moved to Viewpoint Vista.
And remind me what you were on before.
Sure. We were on Microsoft Dynamics GP.
Got Great Plains.
Yep. Great Plains. Yes. Yeah.
Wonderful.
We were initially on Great Plains, and then in the course of being on that product, Microsoft bought them. So we had quite a few years under our belt with that one.
Yeah. I've heard it said, and actually we can queue up our next polling question here that relates to technology. But I've heard it said, Jennifer, where you don't know the exact path forward, but you need to take a step. And with each step, you get a little bit more clarity. And so when I think about even my role as in the assurance world, right, I don't know all the answers up front, right? But what do I know? What do I need to know? Can I take the next step? And so that, kind of like being a contractor, right? You a step at a time, you got a plan, you follow it, and you might have a change order, and you got to pivot.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I love about how companies are embracing technology more is it gives us an opportunity to enrich people's jobs. I just see, even as early as we are in this platform, we're going to be able to take a lot of the manual just stuff out of someone's day, and not in an effort to reduce people, just in an effort to let them spend a little more time doing something that's more enriching and thinking through the process and problem solving. And I'm excited for where we're going to be and how that will develop our team too. It's just gonna, I think it'll make their day just more interesting to be able to have an effect on the company and not have to do the more manual, mundane kind of pieces that just needed to be done before.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And I didn't actually ask you this in advance, so if you don't know, that's okay, Jennifer. But I'm looking at the results from this last poll about the number of technology solutions or subscriptions that folks might be using. And I guess I'm somewhat surprised. It says 10 to 25 is about half. And so, our CPE folks are trailing off a little bit, which is great. But what would you say it is for MSS, give or take? Is it, I would venture to say at least the 10 to 25, if not over 40.
Yeah, I would say, we have, I didn't do a count. I would be, it's up in that 25 range, I believe. Yeah. Even with, if you consider our credit card program, our payment processor, our fleet program, there are just a lot of platforms out there. And the great thing is that, the system that we were on before didn't talk to all of those as well. It was a little more cumbersome. So that was one of the things that we were looking for is something that would let us, because we're not going to be able to just fill every need with one system. So, to be able to talk to the outliers that we need to work with. So,
yeah. Excellent.
I think I heard someone from our construction tech group, who you know well, Jennifer, they told me that the average number of APIs around an ERP was 27.
Yeah.
I would have gotten that wrong before that conversation.
I think I would have gotten that wrong before this ERP implementation, but I believe it seems like every meeting you're talking about API. So, and it's great technology. So.
Excellent. Well, we'll go from API to KPIs. That wasn't even planned. Let's move ahead to industry trends. We've all heard it said, what gets measured gets done. And I think that's true in a lot of ways, regardless of what profession you're in or, your role in an organization. And so if I think about your commentary on the controller role, and it was about, I need to get X done by this date in the month to make sure we're on time for financial reporting and, whether it's payroll or whatever processes you're supporting, to trying to, as a CFO, think about the bigger picture, outside the walls, so to speak. And you talked about just getting out of your comfort zone a little bit there, but how do you wrestle with that change and kind of adapting to that, knowing, hey, I'm an A+ controller, but coming out of the gate, I might be a, B or C level CFO because I've seen other CFOs and I'm not doing what they're doing. Did you find that intimidating at all to have to step into that, or did you, knowing you just embrace the challenge?
James, I still find that intimidating. And when you asked me to do this program, I thought, well, I don't need to be on this program. So, no, I think it's human nature to question that. Of course, you have great days where you're like, I nailed it today. And then, you go home the next day and you're like, whoo, I stunk it up. So the good thing is, there's always another day to get out there and look at things from a different way. I think, looking at industry trends, one of the things that we experienced was, after the pandemic and with the change in how some of the office space is used, we had been doing a lot of work in Class A office space. And this isn't something that I identified, but my relationship and my collaboration with our sales team and our operations team and pre-con, we kind of pivoted and realized that while we still have valued Class A office space clients, that work isn't as plentiful as it was. And so, but we started doing a little more industrial work, for example. So that means you've got a different kind of customer, and they're bringing in this new project, and so we've got to look at, well, how does that change? What we do, how we react to this customer. We really, MSS is really based on relationship. It's very important to us. We want to be what our customers need us to be. And so sometimes when you're in those meetings with leadership, I'm thinking in my head, all right, how am I going to make this work in the current process that we have? So it's rethinking processes and what do we need to, how do we need to manage this customer? What do we need to offer them? Terms, for example, are different. And so thinking ahead for, all right, can we accept those terms? Well, I don't know. Let me think about all of the other things where that will affect down the line. And ordering equipment is different for those customers. So looking at, and there'll be a different industry trend tomorrow that we'll be sitting around a table thinking, okay, so what, how is this going to change? And I think that's, it keeps it interesting because it doesn't seem like things get stagnant very long. And I like that. It gives me, motivation to get out there and solve that problem. So I think it really just kind of goes back to whatever that challenge is that comes up. You've got to have those relationships with the other key players in the company so that you're at the table when those decisions are being made. And I can throw up my hand and say, well, wait a minute, this affects our insurance, or hold on, before we move forward with this, not that we can't do it, but we need to take these steps because we're going into another state. And I know I need to get in there and we need to register in that state. And, some of those kinds of examples. So.
I love the way that speaks to what you were saying earlier about CFO thinking differently, thinking forward, and how you adapted to that. The fact that the shift in your customer base at the operation level affected how you as the CFO think, and how the teams that report to you and that you work with and guide had to adapt to that, when they tend to not be necessarily customer facing, yet they needed to understand the actions and reactions of that change in your customer profile. That may be the most important thing I've heard today. I like that. That's nice.
Excellent. Maybe one other point on this one, Jennifer, is if I think about in the mechanical space specifically, there's a lot of, feels like more recent in the last 24 months or so around prefab and just finding ways, right, with the supply chain and rising costs, whether it's labor or direct input materials, of ways to gain efficiency. So less man hours on a job site. Is that something you all have done or explore, or, what does that look like in your world?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2020, we moved into our current office for the Charlotte office. And one of the reasons why we moved is to have more space so that we could do fabrication. So we have a fab shop, we have our mechanical pipe shop, and we also have our sheet metal for duct work. And so we do a lot of prefab here at our office. And when we talk about kind of changing the mindset of being risk averse, when I first walked into the empty building, I was like, because my first thought was, how are we going to fill this? It was a lot bigger than where we were before. And of course, dollar signs pop up in my head because that's an accountant. That's what happens. And I have been able to see that was such a good decision for us to do that. And I'll tell you, that was just a few years ago. Our owner is, he's a visionary, and so I've had to learn to be a little more open to some of that. I'm still a sounding board for and offer some conservative advice. I wouldn't be an accountant if I didn't do that. But so I serve that role. But I've found that I can see that vision a little more. We're looking at another facility to in one of our other offices because we've outgrown the space, and we want to have the ability, if the opportunity comes up, to do fabrication in that area too. So this time around, I'm excited because I know that that's going to be a good move. It was absolutely the right decision, and I didn't disagree with the decision. It made me nervous, and so now I'm excited, and so that's fun to be able to get to that point where you can see this change and say, oh, okay, I know, I know the route that we're going down here, and I know the things that we want to put in place so that it's another successful move. But yes, the fabrication is a big piece. There was a lot of push for schedules, and it certainly helps with scheduling. There's a push to be able to order equipment faster, and I'm probably getting into our managing capital. So
yep.
Maybe I ought to cut it off and let you do another question.
Yeah, you're good. We'll engage the audience here. We'll throw another polling question up there to hear about how much input do they have with the management of their organization. And this here in the first 30 to 40 minutes of your story, Jennifer, it feels like yours has evolved over time. The amount of input to
I think the idea that your owner, whom I know, I think the idea that some of his visionary thoughts make you nervous, and the fact that probably some of your conservative thoughts make him frustrated, I think that's a great combination. If it were any other way, I would think it probably wouldn't work as well.
That's right. I agree. And, it's important to have that relationship where I can tell him when I'm nervous, and he can tell me when he's not, and he wants to move forward. But he listens to when I have concerns, and we talk through them, and we both get comfortable. And I think that it's a blessing. I really appreciate that, the ability to be able to talk through that with him. But yes, I mean, we would not be where we are if I was running this company on my own, because it's just not in my nature to take some of the risks that he does. But
sure, interesting response on the poll where over 40% have significant input. So hopefully those are folks similar to your role, Jennifer, in their organization, where they're kind of in your C-suite spot, and they have that ear, at least a seat at the table. And I see the 10% or so are using that capital to get CPE today. So
there you go.
We'll move in and alluded to this again, but really just when it comes to managing capital, we could have spent the whole webinar on this topic and then some. But really to hit the high points of maybe that last bullet point of really just strategy driven decisions. You kind of alluded to it on the fabrication shop, and if there's other stories that you have around maybe just some challenges, right? Everyone's, every dollar's got a place, whether it's to pay your folks, tax distributions, reinvest in the business. But is that reinvestment IT? Is it, rising costs, whether it's, insurance, bonding, et cetera, just, day-to-day costs. And that struggle for every dollar, kind of how you approach that, where you have more say as opposed to, your prior role, and it's making sure it's accounted for correctly. But now it's actually where should it go? And thinking through that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've taken steps to try to manage a lot of the costs that do just tend to rise. I mean, we're part of an insurance captive, so that we have a strong focus on safety, and that goes hand in hand with being in a captive. So that's something that we're using, because as our employee count and our revenue goes up, then the insurance cost is going up too. I mean, it's just that is a correlation we're not going to be able to break, but we're trying to minimize that as much as we can. Our health benefits, we also are self-insured, and we're in a captive for our stop loss. So we're taking some of those steps. As far as, we try to do creative things if we can, especially with supply chain issues. We would do things like order the equipment ahead of time, because we wanted to get in line to make sure we met a schedule. And thankfully, we had the cash to be able to do that, because that's one of the one area where you can, cash is king. You can do a lot if you have the cash to back it up. So we've been able to also be creative, like with our customers, where we have maybe a customer that has longer terms. We can offer a discount. And, it just kind of goes back to some of the, whether that's to bring their terms in, or if it's to help them meet budget, then we've been able to utilize some of those facilities. But I mean, we haven't done anything highly unusual. I don't think, in my opinion, that any other CFO isn't doing. I think our biggest reinvestment, besides facilities, because we are trying to expand, but is with our people, working on apprenticeship programs, internship programs, co-ops. We were really focusing a lot of time and funds on trying to develop the next group of employees. I mean, everybody knows you can't find enough employees. It's not just field. It's in the finance team as well. So, coordination staff. We are trying to work through how we can kind of build those teammates from within. So I'd say that's a big place where we're choosing to reinvest, is with our people, what we can do to grow them.
I've heard it said recently, and it's kind of funny because it's true, that the war on talent is over, and talent won. In other words, to your point, Jennifer, regardless of industry and geo, it's tough to find qualified labor, professionals alike. And so spending those dollars internally and on campus and co-ops is a clever way to try to continue to find talent. So,
well, you guys have known this for a long time, and I think the construction industry is coming to that realization too. And there are a lot of good programs out there that really focus on building up these this next group of employees, and so we try to get involved with those. We've got some leaders on our team that are very involved with some local organizations that are committed to developing the construction industry. So it's definitely not something that we've come up with on our own, but it's where we find a lot of value. So.
Yeah, excellent. We'll kick off the last polling question as we move to our final topic around outside activities. And this one, I'm really curious what our audience, how they'll respond here. But the question is, are you considering starting or expanding your involvement in a professional organization? And thinking about, well, no, I don't have enough time. I'm tapped out. No, it's not worth it. There's no benefit. Or yeah, but I'm concerned about the time commitment. Yes, I'm actively looking and there's perceived benefit, or I'm only interested if they're going to give me CPE. Is the final choice there. But one of the questions that came in, Jennifer, kind of at the beginning of our webinar here, was asking what organizations you personally are involved with. And so wanted to hold that question here until we got to this, but maybe just tactically, what are you involved with here locally, or even at the national level, just as a barometer for the audience?
Yeah, I'm very involved with CFMA, the Construction Financial Management Association. I am a past president of the Charlotte chapter. I'm a member of the South Carolina chapter. I don't attend enough of those events, but I enjoy them when I do. I haven't served with that chapter, but I enjoy getting together with that team too. And I'm involved nationally with CFMA. So I'm also involved in a advocacy group for women who are starting over. This is a group through my church in Rock Hill, but professionally with CFMA, and it's been really rewarding for me. When I first started attending, I was one of the ones who was like, I'm here for the CPE. But I found out pretty quickly that it's a good group, and there's so many great organizations in town. I've just kind of chosen to really dive in to CFMA, attend the regional conference, the national conference. So it's been a great way for me to meet people like you guys, and just have a group of peers that you can bounce things off of. What do you do? When we were going through the selection process for our ERP, a lot of peers have moved over to Vista, and so it's good to kind of hear their viewpoint on it. And unintended, but and kind of know going into it that everybody has that time period where they're like, whew, that was rough, so you don't feel quite as beat up on it. I was fortunate to get involved. I really didn't mean to get as involved as I did, but one of their long-time members and past presidents had come up to me and just said, say yes. And I was like, yes. And so I ended up joining the committee. So, and that kind of started it.
I know who you're referring to, and she can be very convincing.
Yeah. She is very convincing. I mean, You can't tell her no. She's so sweet, and you're like, okay, I'll do whatever it is.
Yes. Yeah. On the polling results, I know we moved on to this slide, but the biggest majority of folks said that yes, they were considering or expanding their role, but there is concern about time, right? And so I think, Jennifer, you highlighted just a couple of points about can't do everything, right? But the things you are involved with, you're pretty involved, right? I mean, being president of the CFMA chapter, which is how we've got to know each other, and the connections that are made there, and then even some national type activities at the CFMA level. There's certainly no shortage of opportunities, and saying yes to everything isn't the right answer. But if you're going to be involved, make the most of it.
Yeah, I mean, I really think you get what you put in it. It doesn't mean that you have to be chapter president or, you don't have to be involved nationally to get a lot out of it. I do think that just signing up doesn't really give you what you're looking for. It's that connection. I mean, again, we've talked about relationships and collaboration, and those are a couple of my favorite words, I think. I am teased sometimes about talking about collaboration in every interview that I do, so I have to say it here a few times. But that's really what it is about, is getting together with like-minded peers who are for me to find this group in the same industry it's been very helpful. And you don't really get that just by showing up once in a while. You form those relationships with people, and you enjoy hanging out. And CFMA tends to like to be social too, so that doesn't hurt things. But.
Yeah, excellent. And maybe just, unless Mike, I couldn't tell if you were going to jump in there. The one thing I wanted to talk about here as we kind of wrap up in these final minutes was just about learning from others and teaching others, right? How that, it felt like you had a great mentor, right? And invested in you as the controller. And then at some point the flip switches and there's an opportunity and you fill that role. And suddenly now it's kind of flipped to some degree. Not that you still don't have a mentor in your owner and others, but just, what does that look like for you? Do you enjoy that? Is it something that energizes you to kind of invest in that next generation of leaders and as you continue to progress in your career?
Yeah, I really do. It's funny because I just read a book called Strength to Strength. And in fact, I had just finished it before you asked me to do this program. And, part of that book is looking at kind of the second half of your career or the back, side of your career. And, what are you going to do with that portion of it? And it's less about building it and growing and climbing the ladder, so to say. And it's more about, well, what are you kind of leaving and how are you transferring that knowledge and that experience? And so that encouraged me to say yes when you asked me to do this. And I'm glad I did, by the way. It's been a lot of fun. But I really enjoy that opportunity to be able to just whether it, I don't know that it necessarily is help someone else, but if I can tell them what I did and it tells them what not to do, that's valuable, right? So we have a mentor program, a very kind of loose, casual mentor program here at MSS, and that's been fun to be able to work with some of our teammates that are newer in their careers. Through CFMA, we sponsor scholarships for construction management students at UNCC, as well as construction-based students in other organizations. And I really enjoy hearing from that group, and they're smart kids out there now. So it's probably good that I'm not at that stage in my career, because they're talented, and I think we can learn a lot from them too.
Well said. Well, let me ask you this, and then we've got some questions, James, that you may want to try to run through. I think I heard you say this, but I'm going to try to capture it in a sentence and tell me if I'm spot on or not. It's safe to say that without the connections that you've made through these associations, and you particularly leaned in on CFMA, but is it safe to say without those connections that you may not be as strong technically within the industry as you are, be the collaborative leader that you obviously are, be as up to date on the things that are happening in your world as you have obviously demonstrated today, and last but not least, have as much fun because of the connectivity around you? Is that what I heard, Jennifer?
100%. Yes. Yeah, you summarized it a lot better.
Well, I'm sitting here in the really cheap seat, so I get the opportunity to do that. James, did you want to run through a few of these questions while we've got 4 minutes or so left? Or okay.
Yeah, happy to. And Jennifer, I think these can be pretty quick. Some of them are just tactical. The name of the book you just mentioned, and who's the author?
Yeah, Strength to Strength. And I've got the author written down because I don't know it off the top of my head. I should. Arthur C. Brooks, Strength to Strength.
Yep.
Arthur
and then
C. Brooks.
Yep. I'll jump around here. On the Vista implementation you mentioned earlier, are you on the cloud solution there? And how has the speed been? as far
I'll
as?
be honest, we had some issues with speed right at first, and we worked with Viewpoint to, and this is getting more technical beyond my ability, but we worked with them to get that speed improved. I can't really tell you much more about what the details are that, but we did have some issues right at first.
Yep. And on the insurance captive, how long have you all been in that captive?
We started in that captive in 21. So for that type of captive, we have not started receiving the dividends yet. But it has been, it's been a good program for us. I think it's strengthened our safety program. They offer a lot of resources. We've been very happy with the TPA side of it as well. So,
and was that through? Oh, sorry to interrupt you. Was that opportunity through your normal, I say your typical insurance broker, or how did you find that opportunity? For those that maybe have heard about captives, don't know, is it the right fit? Am I allowed? What does that look like? So just quickly.
It was through our broker. We looked at it a couple different years, and we were kind of on the fence. It wasn't quite time, and then we did that. We pulled the trigger on that in 21. So, but work with our normal broker through that.
Yep, excellent, wonderful. Yeah, I know that's. I know there are top, articles and webinars out there, but it feels like captives can be one of the most confusing, but yet simple topics, not all that different than ESOPs. And so it's just one of those things where if you're not in one or you don't know a lot about it, demystifying that can be really helpful.
Very
well said.
Yeah.
So I think I caught up on everything in the chat, and we have maybe a minute to spare. But maybe just one final, nope, that's not a question. Okay. This has been excellent, Jennifer. Really appreciate this. And the insights have been great. I see some comments, about, just great insights. MSS seems to be a progressive employer and owner and all those things. So it feels like they've also kind of allowed you to run and kind of take flight, so to speak, in your role. And I see your contact up on this last slide. So I didn't ask in advance, but it's on there. So if anyone wants to ping Jennifer directly, there's her email. It might be after hours. She's obviously got a lot going on, but again, really appreciate the time. And thank you for those. We obviously can't see you out in the audience, but appreciate the participation, and hopefully there's an element, a couple things you can take away and back to your organization, whatever role you're in. And this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. You guys are great for letting me participate. And thanks for the invitation, and thanks to everybody for hanging on and getting that CPE, if nothing else. So That's right. Well,
thanks.
Thank you to everyone. And go ahead, Mike.
I was just saying thank you very much, Jennifer. You were indeed the rock star that we thought. James, great job. A lot of fun. Thanks for getting me in here, and thanks to our audience for joining us today.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you again.